Hey class, welcome to week 10 of COMM 313. Before we dive into what we're going to be doing this week, I do want to go over our syllabus as always, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page for the upcoming weeks. So during this week, we are going to review chapters 12 and 13. And this is going to be your last week, which we will be lecturing for our different chapters. Next week, you will have a discussion form to complete, so please make sure to log in early in the week because your main post will be due by Sunday night, just like it was in your first discussion form, which your grades are up and ready to view. In addition, you will also have your quiz, number 3, which are chapters 8 through 13, and that is going to be due by the end of the week as well. Following that, you will have homework week number 2. So for the next 2 upcoming weeks, we will not have a video lecture, as next week your discussion form will need to be completed along with your quiz. In addition, your homework for the 14th. But I am available if you guys have any questions whatsoever. Remember, all my contact information is up here at the top of the syllabus. I do give you my cell phone number, so if you would like to text message me or call, by all means feel free to. It's really no bother at all. I'd be more than happy to help you sooner rather than later, because I know how sometimes emails, I might not respond by the 24-hour mark, which I say I will. Sometimes it might take me a couple days if it's the weekend and, if it's a holiday. But again, you can always text me or call me. All right, let's go ahead and take a look for this week. So during this week, we are going to go ahead and review chapters 12 and 13. Please make sure you have read both chapters before watching the video lecture so you are aware with what I am going to be discussing. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at chapter 12. All right, so chapter 12, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership and change communication. This is actually one of my favorite chapters because my background is actually in leadership. That's what my doctorate is in. So I always appreciate and enjoy learning and lecturing about anything that has to do with leadership and change communication in, especially in organizations, corporate organizations to be specific. So in this chapter, we're going to look at the definition of leadership communication. We are going to discuss various ways in which communication can be used effectively to initiate and realize organizational change, which includes narratives and stories promoting a change, and information and interactive strategies that allow employees to understand and realize change as well. So defining leadership. So often leaders are considered born to lead, which means, this is just something that we have inside of us. This is something where we want to make sure that we implement leadership and we implement whether it's directions on how to do something, whatever it may be, but it's something that we have inside us where we want to help others. 2, increasingly popular perspective on leadership is one which suggests it can be acquired and developed, and leadership can definitely be situational. So the good news is we can all learn how to implement leadership not only in our own personal lives, but also in the workplace as well too. So leaders, it's a way in which they approach others and provide direction, implement plans, motivate others, which has a big idea on communication and behavior. It's kind of like that saying where, if you tell me you're hungry, I can bring you fish to eat. But if you tell me you're hungry, I can show you how to fish. That way, you don't have to come back up to me again and keep telling me, hey, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, and I have to keep giving you fish every day, and feeding you. Rather, if you come up and tell me that you're hungry, I can show you how to fish. I can give you the tools and the education that you need in order to trap fish, cook fish, in order to eat fish. That way, the following day, you can do the same thing. Now I have led you on how to feed yourself, how to catch fish, so that way I can concentrate on other things. And this is something that leaders do in the workplace. This reflects their philosophy, personality and experience, and also organizational situation. Kind of like my philosophy, I like getting my students my cell phone number so that way they can contact me with anything that they may need. I remember when I was in college, I might have a question or two, so I would email my professor. I wouldn't get a response for 2 or 3 days later, and by that time, my report or whatever my question might have been due the next day. So my philosophy is to make myself available to students at all times, 7 days a week. So that's what I try to to do for you guys in order to make sure that you are comfortable in taking this class. And if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to me. It also has to do with this reflects their organizational situation. What kind of job are you in? What is your position title, and so on. So there are leadership styles. They focus efforts on a common goal for a group or team. If someone is a good leader, they are going to try to make sure that everybody in the group passes, everybody in the team learns something, and everybody gets their work done. So keep in mind that with your leadership style, it's going to be dependent on kind of what job you are in. What organization are you in? How are you going to influence and shape the interpretations of others in the organization? So keep that in mind. So there's two different types of leadership styles. There's transactional leadership and transformational leadership. I myself am considered to be more of a transformational leader than a transactional leader. And so we'll kind of talk a little bit about both and the difference between the two. So transactional leadership, the leader is concerned with completion of specific tasks. They use designated authority, exchanging rewards for performance. Incentives are used to motivate employees and lack broader or long-term strategic vision. So this is more something someone who needs to get something done. They have to get something completed, and they're going to make sure that it gets completed by all means necessary. Whereas in transformational leadership, they set broad strategic goals. They have broader visions, are mobilized by leaders to motivate employees and foster collaboration between them. Range of influencing and motivational tactics to push and support subordinates to higher performance levels, and they provide personal and progressive growth opportunities. So I'll give you a good example of the difference between the two. So if you are a doctor in the emergency room, and let's say it's one of the busiest emergency rooms in the United States, in this case, you are going to need to be a transactional leader. For example, let's say someone comes into the ER and they have, let's say, a big cut on their leg, and this is something that needs to be done quickly. The job needs to get done, and the leader needs to be concerned with the completion of tasks. The doctor is going to take the patient, they're going to assess it, they're going to talk to their colleagues, figure out what they need to get done, and they're going to get it fixed sooner rather than later. That's a transactional style. Whereas with transformational, you're going to have more of an approach to make sure there's good collaboration. You're providing motivation for coworkers. For example, a great transformational leader might maybe be a manager at Nordstrom's, and they have employees that they work with. They're going to try to motivate their employees. Hey, during our holiday season, make sure you get your sales up. We need to make sure we're all on the same page. They're going to do what they can. So you won't see that transformational leadership in an emergency room doctor. If you come in with a big cut on your leg and it needs attentiveness right now, the doctor's not going to look at you and say, hey, how's everything with you? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to make this better? Rather, in transactional leadership, they're going to take that approach. They're going to fix it right away without hesitation. So leadership is required during the management of change, and organizational changes have often been classified in terms of degrees of change, whether it's major or radical or even minor and convergent. And change can also be defined in terms of its time frame, such as maybe it's something that's going to be more evolutionary or even revolutionary. So you have additive changes and substantive changes. So in additive changes, this is the update of the old organization and may involve, for example, improvements to way of working. Maybe Loyola University is going to update Sakai and get a brand new management system, learning management system. This is more of an additive change. Substantive changes, departures from the old organization and its major strategic change that often involves a redefinition of the organization's mission and purpose, or a substantial restructuring of the organization. So maybe they just come in and say, okay, we're not going to even use an online learning management system. We're going to completely change everything, and we're going to substitute it with something brand new. Rather, where additive change is, upgrading Sakai into their new version. So when you're managing change, there's some steps that you need to refer to. So when you are looking at the change, step 1, create a sense of urgency. 2, form a guiding coalition. 3, create a vision. 4, communicate the vision to everybody so they understand what you're trying to do, where you want to go. 5, empower others to act on the vision. 6, create quick wins 7, build on the change. And 8, institutionalize the change. And this will help you form and how to be effective in the change that you're trying to do. So factors affecting the choice of change communication strategy. So if there's a high need for communication efficiency and a high need for consensus building, this is going to be the quid pro quo strategy. If it's high need for communication efficiency but low needs for consensus building, this is going to be more of a need to know strategy, and so on with your low need as well. So let's take a look at putting change in perspective, the difference of additive versus substantive changes. So here's a definition for additive and substantive changes. Here's the nature of change. So additive is going to be more of a small scale. Substantive is going to be more of a large scale, and so on. So make sure you're kind of familiar with this chart. You have a good understanding between the two, so this way you can implement this moving forward in the workplace if needed. So here's change management as a persuasion process. So whenever you're trying to maybe persuade employees to adapt a plan or customers to join something, whatever it may be, this is the change management process. So let's take a look at this. So phase 1, this is where you're going to convince employees that the radical change is imperative and demonstrate why the new direction is the right one. I have a good buddy of mine who was working for a bank, and it was bought out by another bank. And when it was bought out by the other bank, they weren't going to change the name of the old bank to the new bank and put it in the new bank until for another year. So what they did was they went ahead and they announced the plan. Then in phase 2, the position and frame preliminary plan. This is where you gather feedback and announce the final plan. So this is where you're kind of letting employees know, hey, this is what we're going to be changing, what we're going to be doing. You're giving them almost a year to adapt. Phase 3, this is where you manage employee mood through constant communication. And phase 4, reinforce behavioral guidelines to avoid backsliding. So there's a plan. This change management as a persuasion process is important to understand, because this is what's going to help you manage the change when you need to persuade people of certain things. So change communication, this is where employee change communication strategies will come in. You have the spray and pray, tell and sell, underscore and explore, identify and reply, and withhold and uphold. Make sure you are familiar with all 5 of these as well, which your textbook talks about more in detail. So communication efficiency is needed when it is physically impossible to communicate face-to-face with all employees. Resources devoted to change communication are scarce, and there is an urgent need to progress through the change process. And consensus building is needed when changes are perceived to be radical and or controversial. There is history of resistance to similar change. Critical resources are controlled by employees, and ongoing support and cooperation are needed to maintain the change. So when you're looking at effective leadership communication, you have authenticity, narratives and stories, and conversational skills. So authenticity, it's a truthful and passionate commitment to be clear, inspiring change idea. This is when you're being authentic in your leadership style. Narratives and stories, they present the rationale for the change, the steps needed to realize it, and the overall beneficial outcomes as a result of it. Kind of like what my buddy went through when he was working for a bank and it was bought out by a bigger bank. This was more of a narrative and story type of effective leadership communication that upper management did. And conversational skills is mobilizing conversations at the interpersonal level to enable others in the organization to see possibilities that they have missed. All right, so that is chapter 12. Let's go ahead and take a look at chapter 13 now. So chapter 13 is going to look at the corporate social responsibility and community relations. We're not going to go into too much detail about this chapter. This is something that is going to kind of really help you have a better understanding of your corporate social responsibility, which we have discussed in the textbook. But this will give you a good overview, and it discusses the concepts of corporate citizenship and corporate social responsibility. It examines community relations, such as an area of corporate communication that is closely aligned with the company's goals and the reputations that they have. So when you are looking at CSR, there are a couple things you need to keep in mind. It's about accountability towards the whole of society, not just the shareholders and customers. Down here, there's an article talking about the BP Gulf of Mexico oil spill. Well, when this oil spill occurred, in the beginning, you could see that the company, they knew it was going to get out eventually, so they were kind of trying to hide it in the beginning. And rather than letting everybody know right away what happened so it can get fixed right away. They tried fixing it themselves, took a little bit longer than usual, and the oil, more oil than what could have been coming out, came out into the ocean. If they had kind of made it more their corporate social responsibility right away to notify the public, notify any kind of environmental agencies, they could have figured out right away a way to fix this issue so that way not that much oil spilled out into the ocean. So in this case, their corporate social responsibility was extremely low by not letting everybody know about it. So the World Business Council for Sustainable Development was written in 2002, and it talks about the continuing commitment by business to contribute to economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families as well as the community and society at large. This is something that Tesla does very well. They're trying to make, vehicles not only more efficient, but also better for our planet. Corporate citizenship, this is the portfolio of activities that organizations undertake to fulfill perceived duties as members of society. So what kind of corporate citizenship does a certain company have? What is it that they do in order to make their corporate social responsibility stand out? So examples of corporate citizenship include maybe pro bono activities. These are things that the company might do for free. Maybe they volunteer some time to the Boys and Girls Club. Corporate volunteerism, such as that. Charitable contributions, or support for community initiatives. So with corporate social responsibility, you have the triple bottom line. This is where you have profits, planet, and people. And these are the three things that they all need to be concerned about. So profit was considered the conventional bottom line. So back in the day, everybody just looked at profits. Now people are looking more at the profits, the planet, and the people. Does this help the people? Does this help keep our planet efficient and safe? And do we still make profits at the same time? CSR codes, these are just a few guidelines in the UN Global Compact Principles if you want to take a look at them. But there are three standard communication strategies. So you have stakeholder information strategy. This is where it's just one-way information flow. This is where the company communicates to the stakeholder, hey, this is what we're doing for our CSR. Then you have stakeholder response strategy. This is where you can communicate back and forth with your stakeholder. And this is your stakeholder involvement strategy, where you have mutual dialogue between a company and its stakeholders. You consider what they say, you might negotiate, and so on. So greenwashing, take a look at this in your textbook. This will kind of give you a better idea of what it means between CSR rhetoric and CSR implementation. This isn't something that you need to know too much detail about, but have a good understanding of it. CSR reporting and dialogue. This is where you publish reports, you launch CSR campaigns. You let the public know what is going on. What is it that your company and organization is doing? And here are some reporting guidelines. Go ahead and read through these as well. So community relations, this relates to communications and engagement with residents of the local community in which the company resides with its facilities, such as specialized area of activity within corporate communication. Like a job that I used to work at, they actually had a whole department where they focused on CSR. What is it that our company can do in order to help the community? How are we going to let the public know what it is we're doing? And so on. And here are some community stakeholders. You have small business and shopkeepers, activists, individuals, community groups, and so on. They all are a stakeholder within the company if it has to do with them. And these are characteristics of the old and new approaches to community relationships. So let's take a look at scope of community programs. So charitable donations prior to 1980. These were charitable donations to local charities and causes. Then you have community involvement, which is more occurred in the 80s. Employee volunteer programs, growing involvement in social welfare programs. And corporate citizenship, these are partnerships with local public institutions and improving the community and increasing welfare. So now you can see how prior to 1980, you just made charitable donations. Whereas now, you have partnerships, you have people from the organization volunteering and so on. And these are the elements of community relationship programs. So you have partnerships, volunteering, and philanthropy. And this is more of your level of commitment to the community and the alignment between program elements. So, make sure when you are working in your organization, you have a good understanding of how you're going to be able to help contribute to your corporate social responsibility. So that's it for chapter 13. And that is also it for the week, guys. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best of luck. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, guys. Good luck to you. And again, reminder, next week, during week 11, you will have a quiz and the discussion forum topic to complete. Take care and enjoy your week, guys.